Oh, you didn't think that all this education would be about temperature, huh? It seems so
That's
simple.
good, though.
It seems so simple. So, hypothermia is bad. I hope that this is like driving 1 point home. What is the easiest one of these three for us to control? Probably hypothermia, right? Acidosis is a little bit more tricky. We can do a little bit of stuff with like maybe some fluids.
Yeah.
Oxygen will help acidosis a little bit. But remember, let's talk about acidosis. Now that we're on it. We're doing it, guys. We're doing it. What is the pH? You guys remember pH? If pH goes down, yeah, what's the normal?
7.35.
7.35 to 7.45 for the human body. 7.0 is water. Yeah. So, does anyone know what the pH of NS is?
It's 6.9.
Close.
7.0.
All I know
Wow.
is I'm not gonna wanna.
5.5,
Wow.
dude. That's crazy.
All I know is I
That's
wanna
no
give
bueno.
LR because of
Yeah.
the chlorine and all
LR?
that. So, yeah.
LRs?
Either
Way
way.
higher.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't-
That's still not great, huh?
No.
No.
you're closer to baseline with LR than you are with NS.
That's correct. That is correct.
What, are you guys assuming that there's going to be so much more acid in trauma calls because of the lactic acid?
Well, high locus.
Yeah, let's see. If you think about the body, so decreased cellular perfusion, any type of shock is going to cause the body's inability to perfuse the cells with oxygen, which will lead to acidosis. So any shock state should theoretically have an acidosis component to it. This is why LR is so good in so many things. Now, NS can be good if you're thinking some sort of alkalosis, right? If you've been throwing up all day, NS is actually probably better. I actually got burned by Dr. Kaufman when he still worked here, because I started LR on
Yeah, I
a throw
remember
up
that.
patient, and he switched it out to NS, and I was like, ooh, what am I not thinking about?
Yeah.
That's what he was thinking about, balancing it a little bit
They're
better.
dumping acid.
He was thinking metabolic.
They're throwing up acid, throwing up acid, throwing up acid, throwing up, right? We've all been here, like 20, when you're 21 and 1 day old, throwing up acid, throwing up acid, throwing
Oh,
up
you missed
acid.
it. We had a gal showing his birthday girl.
Oh, there you go.
She was throwing up acid.
Throwing up
acid.
acid, all over your ambulance.
Yeah.
Then the
NS may be a little bit better. There actually was just a trial. I'll have to find it on the break. I should have written it down. Where they looked between these two, between NS and oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a balanced solution at 7.4. And they studied like 10,000 people, and there was no statistical difference between the two.
Oh, wow.
Really?
So I don't know how that plays out in my whole acidosis talk. I would say, given the two options on an ambulance, shock states, probably LR may be a little bit better. Fair? Fair, right? And that's why. The literature may prove me wrong pretty soon.
I wonder if at some point though, like the person vomiting does eventually hit that bile stage, and then now they're throwing up their own base.
Could.
Well,
It could.
They
If
get
it
a
shifts the other way at
metabolic
that point.
alkalosis because like bulimic patients, anorexic, they're vomiting all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you
Good.
know, you're putting them
Might be worth like,
alkalotic, so you could give them the MS.
yeah, and at that point, like, whatever we do is probably going to be not going to make that much of a difference. When they get labs, they can tailor that a little bit better, because then you're going to be looking at kidney function. And remember the kidneys? Oh, here we go again.
There you go.
Kidney, liver function, all of that stuff. But in our realm, traumas, pregnancy, this is actually, you can run into some acid states too, where you want to give maybe something that's a little bit more balanced. Generally speaking, LR probably wants to go into its own line. It's not compatible with much. So usually,
What do you mean by that? It's not compatible with much.
so if you want to take like, let's say you have LR and you want to mix something like norepinephrine in the same, it doesn't. You can't do that. They will cancel each other out with, I want to say it's the potassium that the problem is, but don't quote me on that.
So what about TXA, things like that?
TXA, I would have to check, but you'd probably be better, if you're going to do that, what I would do is I would stop the LR, do TXA, flush it, restart LR.
In the same, but you could do that in the same LR.
Theoretically,
Yeah.
yeah, you could do it in the same line, just
Not
don't,
together.
not piggybacked at the same time.
Okay.
That makes sense? Same with something like, promethazine, I would probably stick to NS.
Okay.
But if you ever don't know, there is the internet on that phone,
Yes.
and it will tell you stuff.
No,
like
there's
that.
an app. What's that app? It's called like compatibility or something,
Yeah,
and it will
yeah.
tell you
There's
everything.
a couple of them, and so you can search. And if we start getting into things where we're starting to compound more drugs and stuff like that with the pumps and everything, and we're probably approaching that point now, we'll talk about like compatibility and stuff like that. But not all I'm saying is not a lot is compatible with LR. So if you can dedicate a line to it, that's probably the best. Okay, here we go. You guys ready to have some debates?
Dun, dun, dun.
Calcium. Who loves calcium? I do. I've pushed more calcium in the last year than I have in the other 9 years combined. Calcium. They did a study of trauma patients. This is according to Austin. I wanted to get the study from him, but I didn't. And he said that they did a study where 47% of all trauma patients that came into the ER that were like, not just like, I broke my finger, like major trauma patients that went into the ER were hypocalcemic.
Is that because they're being flushed with so much NS and LR that they're not receiving the
Potentially. Probably NS. LR has a little bit of calcium in it. If they're just racking NS, But usually with NS, what you see is chloride. Your chloride goes up and up and up and up and up. Yeah.
Well, they're losing a lot of blood, I
Yeah.
would imagine, so
Yeah.
they're hypocalcemic, and isn't that why you give the calcium?
That's Dana's theory.
For the clotting.
Dana's theory is that calcium is important for clotting. And so when a clotting event happens where you need clots, all of that calcium rushes to that clot, and then that clot goes like onto the pavement, onto the pavement, onto the pavement. So I bet if you measured the blood that hit the pavement, I bet it would be hypercalcemic. That's my guess. There's other theories on why this happens. I've heard something about how like the bones just take a long time to release the calcium. Who knows? But calcium. So calcium does a couple of things. What does it do in the heart?
It promotes contractility.
Contractility. It stabilizes the cell wall, right? Having contractility in a trauma patient, is that a good thing?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Guess what? Doesn't play out in the literature. Doesn't change it. They started pushing calcium in codes, thinking it would help, and it actually hurt patients. You had a better chance of ROS without calcium. But clotting. Clotting is where calcium comes into play. So I wrote this down because I never remember. It is factor 2, 7, 9, and 10. Not important to remember. But basically, let's see. Stupid Roman numerals. Okay. 2, 7, 9, and 10. It also, there's another thing that it does, protein CNS for repairing the endothelial cells. So all of the endothelium that's around cells, that also needs calcium in order to work. Long story short, calcium is really important to clots, okay? So when you get a bag of blood, what do we put in that bag of blood to make sure it doesn't clot?
Calcium.
Calcium citrate. Calcium citrate.
I was gonna say aspirin.
Yeah, it's not a bad guess. I'm sure they've tried it.
Yeah.
Well, so they put calcium citrate in there. What calcium citrate does is it binds calcium. Okay? That's why, so let's just say that like the top up here is calcium citrate. That's why that bag doesn't turn into a clot. It's because you pull all the calcium to the top. So don't you think that if we were trying to get a clot, we would want to add calcium? That's what we're trying to, that's what's been trying to figure out now, is whether adding calcium to a trauma patient alone without blood is beneficial. Mike Hudson thinks so at Classic, so we can push it before, even if we're not transfusion. Everyone else wants transfusions before you push it.
Your buddy Ryan Hodgman believes in it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I read that article. Remember the article where he goes up on that mountain near Elko?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Racing
yeah.
that motorcycle thing?
Yeah.
Him and Bradley Kitts.
Him and the Kitster.
Yeah, him and Bradley
Where I
Kitts.
learned this.
Bradley
I think you
Kitts.
had me read that.
I loved when those guys flew together. They were quite the couple.
Oh my
Oh,
In a
gosh.
good way?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It was like nerd and nerd. Nerd, 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 nerd,
Oh,
nerd.
That's cool.
And, yeah.
That's like CJ and I, we got caught watching a Star Trek cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
Called out on it, and so what?
Yeah. Did you own it?
We owned it.
We owned it.
Totally owned that.
Yeah. You're going to the convention together.
We are totally owned it.
So, anyway, calcium is really important to clotting, right? And coagulation.
Mhm.
These two lead to each other. This has also been studied in pregnancy, and this has been studied in GI bleeds, upper and lower. Okay, so it's any blood loss. That's why they're trying to make it Weingart wants to make it a diamond. This triangle has been around for a long time, but he's trying to make it the diamond to push calcium, even on non-transfused patient. If your patient is getting a transfusion, let's say you're sitting over there where you're waiting for a flight team and they're being transfused, every 2 units they need some form of calcium, gluconate or chloride. There's a big gluconate versus chloride debate. The debate sort of goes like this. Calcium gluconate gets metabolized in the liver, and that's where it breaks the gluconate part off, and it becomes calcium, free floating calcium. What happens if your liver is hypoperfused, as happens in trauma states? The theory is it might not break off. There's a study that I found that kind of disproves that, but that's the debate. Chloride, we have both calcium and chloride in our bloodstream. Right when it hits the bloodstream, it breaks. What's the problem with calcium chloride?
Acidosis.
You can get,
The chloride's already high.
you can get high or low.
Chloride, pushing chloride on a trauma patient doesn't seem like a good idea.
No.
It's acidic.
Yeah.
It is gluten-free though, so that's good.
It is gluten-free.
That's
But
true.
you can get metabolic acidosis.
Yeah, you're kind of pushing an acid in.
Mhm.
That's not great. The other problem is it carries a nasty extravagation risk. Nasty. You're talking cutting arms off and such.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Because did you say it's caustic?
Yeah, I think it
It's
is.
an acid,
Wow.
yes.
So,
Well, if it's caustic, it's a base, right?
I think so. I think it has more calcium than it has chloride. Don't quote me on that though. I'd have to look it up.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it carries an extravagation risk. That I know.
But it is more bioavailable in that form.
Once it hits the blood, it's good. But if you got to make sure that you're pushing this through a very patent line. That's why gluconate, we may go to gluconate with this service, just because, yes, we all want to believe we're great at IVs, and we're pretty good.
Yeah.
But we don't need to be like super good in order to mess up, right? Like that is something that we can probably control. There's also something else about like how much calcium to push. Gluconate basically has a third of the amount of calcium that chloride does.
It's a lot less.
It's a lot less. So we might not need that much calcium in a push. Okay? If you guys would like to reference any of this material, the Coffee Break Hems episode 2.11 or 2.12 is a good place to start. Okay? He doesn't talk about the triangle of death. How are you guys doing? You need a break?
It'd be good just to give the videos a think.
Go get a break.
I saw those